Okay, so as part of my volunteering for Pause AI, last summer I was organizing this open letter from British politicians, members of the House of Lords and the House of Commons, to Google DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis. And I was emailing members of the House of Lords and Commons, asking them to sign this letter. And one Lord I emailed said, have you spoken to Lord Lionel Tarasenko? Because he is friends with Demis Hassabis and an expert on AI. I said, no, that's a fantastic idea. I'm going to email him. And so I did. I sent an email. I said, would you like to sign this open letter? And unfortunately, Lionel declined. He disagreed with my assessment of Google DeepMind. And but that wasn't really the thing that worried me. The thing that worried me was this. I didn't know that Lionel was the president of my college. And then I was like, how did I manage to get in trouble with the president before I even got to Oxford? But luckily, it was all fine in the end. In fact, Lionel reassured me in a follow-up email that actually Oxford University is a place where we can agreeably disagree about these types of questions. So it all worked out in the end. Okay, so why was I volunteering for Pause AI in the first place? Well, there's basically two premises that I want to argue for here with a very bad conclusion. So premise one, AI will become smarter than humans, and possibly quite soon. And premise two, we're not ready for that. So we could spend a very long time arguing about how smart AI is currently, how quickly it's progressing. But I think the basic story is that you have humans who are sort of static, right? If you take humans 100 years ago, 200 years ago, even 1,000 years ago, maybe we've got a bit dumber, maybe we've got a bit smarter, but we're basically the same, right? Whereas AI, for a long time, it was at 0, and then now it's not at 0 anymore. It's going up. So at some point, these lines are going to cross, and possibly quite soon. My guess is that probably these lines are going to cross in the next 10 years. But I can't predict the future. Nobody can. If you actually look at the expert track record of people trying to predict AI progress, everybody sucks at this. Nobody can do it. If you look 10 years ago, where did people expect AI to be now? Much less advanced than it actually is. But in the 50s and 60s, people massively overestimated how quickly AI would progress. So really, nobody can predict this stuff. But it seems at least plausible to me that in the next 10 years, AI is going to overtake humans in intelligence. And obviously, intelligence is this very complex, multidimensional thing. And reducing it to a single number is a bit of an oversimplification. But as a rough picture, this seems about right to me. Okay, so if AI is going to get smarter than humans, what's going to happen then? Well, my claim is that it's going to be very bad. So why do I think it's going to be bad? It's because we don't know how to control AI. We don't actually know how to make AIs want to do the things that we want them to do. We don't know how to give them the goals that we want them to have. And in fact, this applies not just to future systems, but to current systems. Current AIs are not really able to be controlled by their creators. So for example, OpenAI, they released an update to ChatGPT earlier this year. They were trying to make it more friendly, but accidentally they made it much more sycophantic. They made it always agree with the user, even when the user was clearly wrong. So they had to roll that back. Another example, you had Grok, the Elon Musk's AI. They tried to make it less woke, and they did achieve that, but I think they went way too far, which is that they made it start calling itself Mecha Hitler. And they had to roll that one back. And Anthropic, the people who make Claude, they released a new update to their model, 3.7, which was a smarter update. And it was smarter, but the problem is that it also had a tendency to cheat. When you give it a test, often instead of giving you the solution, the thing that you actually wanted, it would just cheat and change the test such that it automatically gave itself full marks. So lots of people found this very annoying. So these are interesting examples because they all happened this year. So 2 years after ChatGPT has come out, there's been plenty of time to be researching this stuff. And there's plenty of financial incentive to get this right. All of these examples cost companies money and prestige, and generally were very costly for them. So, despite the fact that there's every reason to be trying to get this stuff right, AI companies are still consistently making these types of mistakes. So why is it? Why is it so hard to get an AI to do what you want it to do? Well, because we don't actually understand how AI works. This is a neural network. ChatGPT is basically a very, very large neural network. The actual ChatGPT looks something like this, but about 100 million times bigger. So if you ask XAI, why did Grok start calling itself Mecha Hitler? They don't know. Like, they can't say, oh, it was that bit. Like, that neuron over there, that was the Mecha Hitler one. Like, we actually just have no ability to, like, precisely understand what is going on inside an AI. And so that makes it hard to control. And furthermore, we're not just trying to, like, get it to roughly point in the right direction. We're trying to hit a very, very narrow, precise target. You can't just align your AI with human values. You need to align your AI with the right human values. And this is not a natural thing. Like, there's no part of physics where you can write down a simple equation for, like, oh, here's human values right now. Human values are this very complex stochastic result of evolution and culture and different processes. Imagine if you got an AI and you managed to successfully align it to Aristotle. Well, that's terrible, because Aristotle thought that slavery was great. So you don't want to do that. In fact, you need to get it to, like, the exact precise right values. Otherwise, things could be very, very bad. And so this also illustrates that it's not a problem about intelligence. Aristotle was very smart. So why did he believe in slavery? It's because your values and goals are a completely separate, independent axis from your intelligence. You can be highly capable and have any goal. These are just, like, not related things. People don't consistently get kinder and more compassionate as they get smarter. And we see this in the Claude example. The problem is not that Claude doesn't know what we want it to do. The problem is not that it's too stupid. If you actually ask Claude about these examples where it's cheating, it can explain to you the situation. It understands that it cheated on the test and that that wasn't what you intended. The problem is it doesn't care, because you didn't make it care. You have to actually design the system such that it cares about the things that you want it to care about. And we don't know how to do that. We have these very blunt tools for aligning these networks because we don't design them by hand. They're way too big. We have these algorithms which train the networks, and these can roughly point it in the vague direction that we want, and they do a fairly good job at making them smarter, but they don't allow us the control to precisely point the network where we want it to be heading. So we have a scientific problem. We're going to build these AIs that are much smarter than any person, and we need it to point precisely at the exact human values that we have. So you might apply the scientific method to this problem, like we do with every other problem. The problem is that you can't. You can't run experiments on a superhuman AI. You get one shot. If you create a superhuman AI and it doesn't share your values, then it's going to take over, it's going to take control away from you, and you don't get to run a second experiment. So we have a new type of problem that we haven't encountered before, a scientific problem where we don't understand the theory behind what we're doing, and we don't get to run experiments. And so if you were going to try to solve that type of problem, you probably would want to try quite hard, put resources into it. But we're not doing that. For every one researcher working on AI safety, there's over 100 who are just working on making the AIs smarter. OpenAI, the people behind ChatGPT, they had a team, briefly, that was trying to work on this type of problem. But most of the team resigned within a year because they weren't allocated the resources that they need. Because there is a large amount of competitive pressure to make the AIs smarter, to grab market share, to beat other companies. Every company and every country is competing to create AI faster, better than their competitors. So this is the situation that we're in. We're heading towards AI that is smarter than any person. We don't understand how they work. We don't have the tools to align them with our values, and we're not even trying. So I think Yoshi Benjo put this well. He's the most cited AI scientist in the world. In fact, the most cited scientist in the world. We're basically cooked. This is not going to end well. Jeffrey Hinton, the second most cited scientist in the world, the Nobel Prize winner for AI, well, in fact for physics, because they don't have a Nobel Prize for AI. He said there's more than 50% chance of the existential risk. So, if we do this in real life, we're actually going to die. Like, this is not a thought experiment. This is real life. And one thing that makes this even harder is that we don't get a clear warning signal necessarily. There is not, because it's so hard to predict how AI is going to advance, we don't know how long we have. And because an AI that is smart is not going to give you a warning, it's not going to give you a clear media moment where everybody gets to come to their senses and start doing the sensible thing, you may not have a clear point where you know, okay, now we have to actually start taking this seriously. The longer we wait, the harder it becomes to slow down, because AI gets more and more integrated into our economy. AI becomes more essential to every aspect of daily life. At some point, we're not going to be able to slow down. We're not going to be able to turn back the clock. So this, right now, this is your warning. If we do this, if we continue down the current path, we are actually going to die. Okay, so optimistic ending. If you want to do something about this, you can. Pause AI is an activist grassroots movement. We do protests outside of Google DeepMind. We do lobbying. That's me sitting in the Houses of Parliament talking to MPs and lords. And, of course, despite Lionel not signing, we actually do publish open letters. If you want to help out with this, if you want to join in, come to the event in 2 days, on Thursday, on the in the Reuben Bar, and follow the Instagram. Thank you.